Welcome back. We're going to now do a live panel discussion exploring scalability. How do you go from prototyping to mass market production? We started off this morning with a discussion of mass level market trends and the technology behind the material science. And within this, we're now going to break it down and talk about how do you go from this material that's very special to products that are fully ramped up. So we're here joined by a panel of experts. On our left, we have Jeff Westom. Jeff, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jeff Westom, Senior Automation Manager, based out of our headquarters in Plymouth, Minnesota.
And Jeff, if you were to summarize the expertise that you're bringing to the discussion in one word or less, what would it be?
Automation.
Automation. All right, and then we have Philipp Begert. Philipp, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, thanks, Daniel. My name is Philipp Begert. I'm New Product Development Director, also based in Plymouth.
And if you were to summarize it in one word or less, what would it be?
It's a hard one, but I'm going to go with manufacturability today.
Manufacturability.
Yes.
That's almost two words, but you just barely got away. They say manufacturability is our best ability. So, all right, and then we have Florance Veronelli. Florance, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Daniel. I'm Florance Veronelli, and I'm the segment manager for healthcare and medical.
Fantastic. And in one word or less, how would you describe your area of expertise you're bringing to the discussion?
I'm German. We bring words and connecting it with each other. No, I would say market.
Market. Okay, very good. All right. So, Florance, we're going to start with you. Obviously, when customers are working with us, they have specific challenges they're trying to solve. Can you walk me through what does the requirements gathering session look like with a customer?
Yes, that's a good question, Danielle. So let's say a customer is approaching us. In best case, he's approaching us as early as possible in his development phase, because then we can really support him from beginning on. So typical requirements we then get from our customers is they want support for material selection, for example. Material selection or even material development. And what counts into this is a big part in healthcare and medical for sure. Compliance, is the material biocompatible? Are there any other regulatory requirements to it? But also silicone is a little bit a different material than our customers are very often used to, for example, thermoplastics. So how does it behave in the application? What do we need to consider in terms of hardness, friction, and all of these things? What comes on top of that is then a lot of support for design. And also design I would divide into two major topics. The one thing is design within the application itself. As said, silicon is a little bit different. For example, it's not compressible. So therefore, we can support in how does the actual component should look like to have a good behavior, so to say, in the application. But also, we can support in finding the right design for manufacturability, because that way we can find an efficient way to manufacture it in the end.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, but before I do that, I want to also interject a rule, okay? The rule is, because it's medical device, anytime any of you can tie it back to quality and risk, you get bonus points, okay? So my follow-up question for you is going to be, so the customers are coming to us and we're working on the requirements. What types of things are we asking them for, in terms of the two-way dialogue that we're having here?
How often do I need to incorporate quality and risk now?
All of the time.
So what we are really asking our customers is about the application. We want to understand the application and not only the component itself. And why do we want to do this? Because also we do our internal risk assessment. And this is because we want to make sure that we understand the criticality of the component in the full application, in the full device. That way, with our risk assessment, I have to say risk again.
That's a point.
With this risk assessment, we can make sure that we always meet the right quality for this. That makes it hard to go on. But yeah, with this risk assessment, we can make sure that we always have the right quality in the application, and we have a reliable component in the end for our customer.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm hearing a couple points stacking up here, Philipp, so we'll see how you can do.
It's going to be a hard one. That's going to be a hard one, Daniel.
Yeah, so Philipp, so we've talked a lot about the requirements gathering process. Once we get into execution, what does that look like?
So actually, I'm going to really segue that over from Florance, because what she just said is understanding the requirement, understanding the application. Because before we even going into production of anything, we need to understand one thing, and it's manufacturability, right? We got to make sure the part is manufacturable. And we'll do that with something that we call design for manufacturability, DFM, or design for assemblability, DFA. So, and I'm also going to get my point now, because this is all about design by quality. Again, understanding the application helps us to make sure when we plan into the next step, into prototype and production and so on, we are actually including already the knowledge of the, or we are including the knowledge of the application, making sure that critical areas, that we do not have any parting lines at critical areas, that where we gate, for example, we don't have, we don't gate at critical areas. So that understanding, so that hand in hand of application over to manufacturability, onto the design, the redesign maybe even of the part, if it's coming from our customer. That's really the key here.
And so, I mean, this design for manufacturability is one thing, so you took us back, but like,
yes,
at some point we have to get prototypes or something, so what's the next steps beyond that?
Sure, and that's totally correct. Now we are sure, now we have the manufacturability of the part, and now we want to get to the next step, the prototypes, that's correct. How are we going to do that? I mean, even with the prototypes, our intention is whenever we build the prototype to have production intended prototype. So we don't just throw anything together in the garage and then, or in a garage style, I want to say, just squirt silicone into a 3D printed mold or something like that. No, we want to do, if we do prototypes, of course, we want to be as close as possible to the production manufacturing. So, like something like the original material for the silicone, that's the key. To use already hardened steel inserts for prototype, have the parting lines, the gate set exactly where we're going to intend it in the production, and that's also surface texture. So especially if we talk about coefficient of friction, low coefficient of friction, non-slip slip effect, that's all about the surface quality, for example.
Great, and so we're starting with this prototyping, and then at some point we have to start thinking about automation. Jeff, is it too early at this point to bring automation into the equation?
Yeah, it's never too early to bring automation into the equation. Kind of as Philipp talked about, we want to make sure we understand how we're going to make it early on. And part of that is figuring, are we going to need to automate this process? Is there going to be requirements of maybe inserting features, insert components? So understanding if we might want to do a automated demold or automated insert, bringing automation to those conversations very early can help us prepare for that on the front end. That way it'll be a lot easier to integrate automation into the tool later on, and we'll have a better idea of how we're going to actually make this part, so how we're going to actually produce it and bring it to scale later if we bring automation into that conversation very early on.
So it sounds like it's not just important to bring automation at the very end, but even all the way back as far as prototyping and design, we need to be thinking about actual true scale up and rampability of this.
Absolutely, and there's times where you don't know it until the very end. We certainly have cases of that, but it's always much more efficient if we can do it on the front end and plan for that.
It's fantastic. So Florance, can you talk me through what is this suite of capabilities in terms of prototyping and automation and these kind of things? What does this mean for our customers in terms of the value that Trelleborg can bring to the table?
That's a really good question, because everything what you heard from the three of us right now sounds like a lot of effort that we put into it. It's really time consuming, so it's a good question. What is the value for the customer? And the fun thing here is it sounds like it's a lot of effort, but actually it's really saving us time and helps accelerate to bring the product to market. So by being included from beginning on, we can make sure that we learn in every phase, because everything that what we do, what you just heard, we do in-house, and we can take all the learnings, all the experience from one phase to the next phase, from an early development to the full scale up. And yeah, by that we are just much faster. And the great thing here is that we can have quality in mind right in the beginning. That means we make use of the same material of tooling, but also the same serial material of the component, which means that typically you can already make use of very early stage components in your clinical studies.
So using these early prototypes in the clinical studies, that sounds very interesting. But can you walk me through a little bit more, about what is like the speed to market impact of this, and what's the impact for the customers as they bring these products to market?
For the customer, definitely it is saving money. By accelerating this time, it's bringing new innovations to market faster. Being the first to market, coming into a leading position on the market is definitely one of the key benefits for the customer. So this is what we always have in mind. But also hearing our vision, it's not only the customer, for sure, we want to make sure our customers are happy, but it's also the patients on the very end of the chain. And we have also in our vision statement, we want to increase patients' quality of life. So bringing latest technology to the market, really innovative medical devices, as fast as possible, make sure to treat patients with a state-of-the-art technology is key.
Fantastic. So it's not just about understanding the applications, but also the commercial considerations and what are the customers trying to do. So Philipp, talk me through at this point in the learning cycle, how do we leverage the things we've learned as we go to ramp for mass market production?
Yes, sure. So now, we did the manufacturability. We went into prototype, and again, everything is always intended to how we're going to do industrialization or mass production. And that's also what Jeff was saying, including that what Jeff was saying, also already having the intent of automation very early. And from that now, so we're taking a prototype tool, and we started, for example, with a 2-cavity prototype tool, and now we know we're going to go into the industrialization process. We're going to use whatever we learned with the prototype tool, the tests we made, we are going to scale that up. That's just one example. We could have also say, okay, we're going to do a 4-cavity, and now we're going to do a scale up to a 16. And then from a 16, it's if the ramp up of the annual quantity of the parts from the customer go up, we can also then scale it up higher to a 32 or 64 and so on. So it's really all scalable throughout the whole production phase.
And I'm going to ask a follow-up question too on the tooling cavitation and the decision to invest and then where to invest in that. How do we help customers make sensible decisions that actually match what their long-term production needs will look like as they scale up?
That's a very good question, and you're going to laugh because it all depends. I know. But it does depend on what's the annual quantity from the customer, right? There is one thing, we don't want to have a lot of different tools of the same product. So we want to make sure that with a tool, we can supply the customer the product necessary. Of course, there's a certain limit to cavitation that we can go. So far within our organization, we're up to 265 cavities on LSR molds, for example. But it's really depending. If there's also the other extreme a little bit where you say, for only a few hundred parts a year, or a few thousand parts a year, you're not going to build a 64 cavity, for example, because it's going to run just a couple of hours more or less.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm also curious too, earlier it was mentioned the iCAST, and then you also mentioned this other capabilities that Trelleborg has with the Rapid Development Center. Walk me through what the difference of these prototyping methods are.
Sure. So the iCAST is rather more of a prototype or pre-prototype, I could say, where you can have first functional samples that can be used as functional samples. But the parting line might not be exactly the same. There is some limitations with material, but that's on that side. So if we do something in our innovation center, that goes back to the scalability or the intent of serial production. So we want to use the exact same parting lines. We want to use Hardened steel, we want to be very close to the serial production process. And that's with the iCAST, it's more for function. For example, if you know you're going to have lots of different iterations on the part, because you don't know what the part geometry looks like, the iCAD is exactly the right way to go, because within very quick time, we can turn around several different geometries.
That's fantastic. I want to do a follow-up about simulations here in a second, but first let's talk about automation again and go back to that. So as we're looking at cavitation and tooling and the mass market production ramps for the customers, how does this mass market automation come into the equation here, and what support and services can we provide customers as it relates to doing this and increasing their efficiencies?
So as we're scaling our production and kind of learning and growing and developing that to higher and higher cavitation, we're kind of hoping to do the same with automation. With those very early phases, we could be looking at just a handheld tool by an operator, and we can learn what works, what doesn't work. If we're going to fail fast and cheap versus getting it all the way to an end production and then trying to learn from that. So we're going to learn on those early phases with some handheld components, maybe grow that to a benchtop station that helps to unload a few parts at a time and grow that on a scaled level to a fully automated cell that may be doing full inspection or even assembly of components.
And you mentioned doing inspection in an automated way. What's the connection between automation and quality?
There's a huge connection. There's kind of two big benefits there. First, you can go a lot faster with high quality components by using automation. You saw in Linda's presentation earlier, there's some very, very small components. With automation, we can go a lot faster with those components than trying to do that with the naked eye. By also adding automation in, we can inspect inline and pull out a scrap part much earlier on, and we can add machine vision to inspect a part. We could add other types of inspection or testing inline to get rid of that scrap product very early.
And two, I mean, we talked earlier that there's this big market trend towards things getting smaller and smarter. How does the smallness also make automation the right solution in some of these cases?
Again, it comes back to some of those parts are very hard to handle. So if you're trying to, with a naked eye, pick parts and load them into something, or to sort parts or even inspect parts, it's very difficult to do with your fingers or with tweezers under a microscope. A machine is capable of doing that when we design the tool to handle those small parts and make those fine motions.
Thanks. And so I want to go back to you on my simulation question, because we referenced the iterations that customers are doing. What type of simulation services do we provide for customers as it relates to them understanding what if the part's actually going to work or not in the application, even before they do prototypes?
That's a very interesting question. And so on simulation-wise, we can start as early as on an FEA study. So let's say we want to design, or the customer needs help to design a piston seal or anything like that, and needs to have a very reduced coefficient of friction. So like the so-called stick-slip effect, that when you you push, for example, a syringe and it's very hard to get going and then suddenly it goes. That's the stick-slip effect. So with that, something like that, we can simulate with our FEA capabilities. And so making different designs simulated, see how to get that coefficient of friction down. Thank you. And and that also in combination with material, choosing certain materials that have lower coefficient of friction as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, panelists, for the quick discussion here. We're going to go to some audience questions now. So let's see what we have coming in. This first one, I'm going to ask for Florance. You showed scalability for a project, but how can Trelleborg help scale globally?
Yes, so for everyone who was already part of our first presentation presented from Linda, you may saw our current global manufacturing footprint. And this is very strongly connected with that. For sure, we want to make sure that we can serve our global customers also on a global base. We want to do this by a region-in-region approach. That means that if a customer contacts us, let's say in the US, and then wants to bring this product to market in Europe as well, we want to be able to provide this component also from a site manufactured in Europe. to make sure that we have short transportation routes, we have a fast reaction time. We also have a bit more of a security in the supply chain because we have two sides supplying this component. And for sure, just thinking about the shorter transportation routes, it comes back to sustainability again.
Yeah, talk me through that a little bit more. I mean, the transportation sustainability connection for in-region, for-region production. What other sustainability advantages does Trelleborg have to offer our customers? There
is a broad range of it, and we currently also try to dig much deeper into it, and we are happy to collaborate with our customers on it. So for sure, we are starting, I guess, where currently everyone starts. Sustainability is a big topic in all industries. So we are for sure having a close look into our carbon footprint. We want to understand how to lower our carbon footprint. We are having close investigations into scope 1, 2, and 3, and within the whole group, very ambitious targets for where we want to go within the next years. So definitely we are more than happy to collaborate with our customers on it and understand also better what or how we can support them in lowering their carbon footprint. But what I would like to bring in here as well is then we have a look into everything else that we're doing right now. This starts with what material do we use? How can we reduce that carbon footprint by producing less waste or doing more recycling of our waste or also the final components? We want to work with our customers in design for sustainability. So how can we support to find the right design to, in the end, have a product with a smaller carbon footprint, which can be the final design, the final device needs less water, or it lasts longer, or needs less cleaning methods, something like that.
That's interesting. And especially the cleaning methods is also very important because sometimes these chemicals can have an environmental impact as well.
Exactly.
So, all right, going to Jeff. Audience question is, what are the challenges unique to automating silicone?
Sure. Automation in general is always creating something new from the ground up, so there's always challenges involved. Silicone and rubber in particular are flexible, they're sticky, they're awkward parts to handle, which is the case with the automated systems as well. It's hard to pick the parts, it's hard to work with the parts. So certainly the material itself is a challenge, just in the way it behaves, trying to singulate it, trying to pick it up, trying to grip it in a known location. An extra challenge comes in with silicone being translucent. When you're trying to look at a translucent part against a shiny surface in a mold, it's very challenging to try to find that with typical industry standard vision systems. Fortunately, we have an extremely talented team that has dealt with a lot of these challenges over the years and has built that expertise to be able to work with it. We also do a little partnering with outside houses, outside automation groups, but we're very selective with those groups to make sure that it's groups that understand how to work with silicone and these challenges that come along with it.
And so just to clarify, so Trelleborg has in-house team members dedicated to automation with in-house expertise built on that?
Correct. We have an automation team spread across several locations in our organization, supporting even more locations yet. One of the challenges that comes with that, and one of our actions with that, is we've developed standard processes, standard parts, standard procedures, templates for things, and program templates, so that a machine that's developed at one site or another will still have that same fit and feel, as well as similar components. So our maintenance groups, our technicians, our support groups don't have to understand 17 different machine languages and different robots and different vision systems. We can standardize that and give ourselves much more efficiency in the debugging process and the training processes.
Thank you. Philip, can you answer this question? How is silicone affected by friction?
Yeah, so in general, silicone is a tacky material. So it has actually a very high coefficient of friction, right? So if you put it on, especially take a silicone part, you put it on a glass plate, it really kind of likes to stick to it. So we can work, or as I explained before, with the FEAs, with the FEA simulation, we can work or change some of the friction or some of the coefficient of friction with design. It's also surface texture. So if you make a textured surface, you generally have less contact onto the mating part. So it also reduces friction, for example. Then again, there's materials. So general higher shore hardness will have has a less stop-slip effect than lower shore hardness. And then again, with the materials, if you add additives, you can work towards that or to decrease the coefficient of friction again. So there's several things that we could do, and it's always really application dependent.
Yeah, it all depends.
It all
There we
depends,
go.
Daniel. With engineering, it depends.
It does. Florance, here's a question. What is your general delivery time for a prototype?
Can I say it depends? Also here, it depends a little bit on what is the component and what kind of rapid prototyping process we actually make use of. We heard about iCAST, which can be super fast. We have several different methods in our innovation center as well that we can make use of. So it can vary depending on the quality that you need, also how close it already has to be to on the serial design. It can be something between a week or maybe 4 weeks. Also depends on the complexity. Do we talk about a silicon component only? Do we talk about a two-component product? So that's a little bit the variance, but yeah, a week to 4 weeks, I would say, is definitely realistic.
Okay, thank you. Philipp, can you answer this question? What does production intent prototyping mean?
Sure. So production intent prototyping means that when we prototype, or the concepts that we built, the tool that we built, the automation that we are trying to implement there, we are already thinking of that in the prototype phase. It's, as Jeff explained before, we may not going to do fully automate, as an example, the part removal, but we are intending of how we would do it and maybe make a hand fixture. So, and that is not just with automation. Sorry, Jeff, I take here your thunder a little bit. I talk more about your expertise, but it's the same with the tooling as well. And the tool, we have exactly the same. So making sure that whenever we create the prototype tool, that it is intended, or that, it's intended for the at least similar or very close manufacturing process. And by doing that, actually, we can also use a prototype tool, for example, and use it as a pre-serial tool, or there's a few other words for it, but there's also some customers that don't like certain words because it means like pre-serial tool. It's like not there yet, but we can use that and actually create already, for example, parts for clinical trials.
Great. This is on, going back to you, Philipp. Are cavity pressure sensors useful in LSR molds?
Yes, that's a very good question, a very technical question. They can be, but it's really depending again on the use. So one problem is a little bit the space. I mean, they're very small now, so you can get them into tight spaces, but the maintenance of them is very difficult. So if you have a 16 cavity tool and you have 16 pressure sensors in each cavity, it's going to make it very, very difficult to maintain. It also adds cost to the tool, but it does help within the molding process. We're already doing that at some stages. Maybe just not also, there's also scaled down possibilities to, for example, only have a couple of pressure sensors in, but it's definitely something we can look at,
Fantastic. Next question is for Jeff. Do you have any automated solutions to inspect bond quality between silicone and metal surfaces? Can your inspection systems measure internal/obscure geometry?
Off the cuff, I can't speak to any specific systems. We have a lot of systems across our different locations. again, to every one of our answers here, it's going to be case dependent, right? What does that geometry look like? What does the material look like? Can we do something with some kind of an NDE test or inspection that way? So it's really going to depend on what kind of bond we're talking about. If it's a pull test, if it's an actual destructive test that we're going to do. So it's very much an application-based answer. So that was kind of a non-answer to the question. It's possible. It would be very dependent on the case to figure out exactly how we would do it.
Next question is, do you have a material model or data set of LSR materials ranging from lowest hardness to highest for FEA analysis?
Yeah, I mean, we can characterize the materials, and we have quite a large material base already available. And if it's a very specialized material, we will have to characterize it first, but we have internal capabilities to do that, so that's correct. So we have those data models available. So,
Great. And Philip, this might be for you. Is there a process comparable to iCAST that makes it possible to produce two-component prototype parts?
we can do two-component parts in our innovation center with a steel tool. Might going to be a little bit difficult with the iCAST. It's probably a good next challenge that our colleague Jarner could work on. There might be possible to combine two silicones together. That could be doable. With a harder component, it would have to be evaluated, but pretty sure there is possibilities to do that as well.
Fantastic. All right, now that kind of wraps up in terms of the audience questions that we have. So I'm just going to go down the list and just say, if you could kind of summarize what makes Trelleborg unique to partner with in one sentence, what would it be?
All of us? Okay,
You
I
first,
can go
Florance,
first.
Absolutely.
I would say it's definitely the people we are working with here. So our customers have a broad range of experts, and all experts are involved early on and support our customers from the beginning till the end, no matter if we talk about sales engineering, new product development, R&D, or if we talk about quality. We are always there and make sure our customers get the best product.
Great. All right, Philip, what's your one sentence if you were to summarize the Trelleborg
That gets minus
advantage?
point because there was more than a sentence.
That was more than a sentence. It was
I
a
always
sentence
said "and" in the middle.
with an explanation.
No, the large knowledge of engineering and capabilities throughout all our sites. And that makes up also like the people, the understanding of all the different materials and processes.
Great.
Hope there was a sentence.
There were a few run-on clauses, but
There's
this
commas.
is good. Yeah. Jeff, what do you think this is the difference?
I'll go with creativity. We have a lot of different sites doing a lot of really unique things, and we have people that are coming up with just really outside-the-box solutions for problems that may have been previously unsolved.
Great. All right, Jeff, Philip, Florance, thank you so much for joining for our panel discussion on scalability. We really appreciate your time.